Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Data Days 2024. I hope everyone enjoyed the panel discussion the last hour, but I promise you that I have a very gifted speaker for the next workshop for you. With us today is Christopher Chin, and he is presenting from the US today. Christopher transforms data professionals into star speakers. He previously worked in the data industry in the fields of data journalism, data science, visualization, and business intelligence, always seeking to tell the story within organizational data to maximize business impact. He realized that while technical training is frequently abundant, soft skill training is often overlooked, despite being a critical part of the value chain. For that reason, he launched the Hidden Speaker to offer specialized data communication training and equip developers, analysts, and managers, as well as executives, with the tools and confidence to give inspirational presentations. Christopher, we spoke before, and I am super excited that you are part of the Data Days with us here this week. I'm sincerely looking forward to your workshop. So the floor is yours. Let's take it away.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and welcome everyone to this workshop on data storytelling, how to use generative AI for data storytelling. And I'm super excited about this topic because I thought to myself, data storytelling is a buzzword today. Generative AI absolutely is. What if I could put a workshop together, combining them both? And I want to emphasize this workshop is intended to be fun. It's intended to be interactive, not just me lecturing at you, but making it an experience. In part one, for about the first hour or so, with your input, I'll be creating a presentation from scratch. I'll be using your input to show you the true potential of generative AI, like ChatGPT. And in the second part, in the second hour or so, I'll have you get hands-on with my guidance, start applying some of these principles in practice. To that end, I want to start off by asking you a question. And that question is, you can either come off mute if you feel comfortable or type it in the chat. What is the coolest thing you've used generative AI like ChatGPT for? So again, feel free to come off mute or put your thoughts in the chat. What is the coolest thing you've used it for so far? And previous answers I've heard when I've asked this question are using it for travel itineraries, using it for planning your day, using it to brainstorm ideas for your next fiction novel. What is the coolest thing you've used it for? Ooh, I like that answer, which is generate music. Generating birthday cards, that's another great one. Suggesting some Python code, fantastic. There's a good mixture here of use cases. There's personal ones. So if we have to do a lot of writing, we have to generate copy for things, why not make it easier, more efficient with generative AI? But also some cool things for work. So create business models, as Rod suggested, or even Python code. It can make writing code so much faster. We used to have to type it all out ourselves and think of it, but now ChatGPT can generate it. Well, the coolest thing I think generative AI can do that I'll be showing you today is creating data stories, presentations, slide decks, all from scratch within the submission of a few prompts. And I'll be teaching this to you using a 5-step framework called ACTED, A-C-T-E-D. I'll be teaching you what each of those letters mean throughout the workshop. And that framework for prompting will teach you how to use generative AI for much more than what I'm teaching you today. I'm Chris, a data storytelling and presentation trainer. And one thing I really lamented seeing in our industry when I worked in it was the lack of focus on soft skills. I saw so many colleagues around me, technically gifted and brilliant, but suffered in their career potential because they didn't have the training to present, speak with confidence, tell a story. And I wanted to make it my mission to change that paradigm, to equip every data professional with the skills to give great presentations. So what I'll be sharing with you today is part of that paradigm, how to do data storytelling well, how to communicate well, like a leader. And what I want to emphasize is one thing. If you take away anything from this workshop today, it's this one thing. Data storytelling is not about the data. I'll say that one more time. Data storytelling is not about the data. It's not even about the data visualizations that usually accompany these kinds of data stories. Data storytelling, at the end of the day, at its core, is about the people on the other side listening, designing a presentation that best fits their needs. So to that end, I'm going to use what you gave me, the use cases for ChatGPT, and I'm going to show you a live demo with it. So the rest of this workshop is going to be super fun. It's going to be a live demo in ChatGPT. I have no idea what's going to happen, so this is terrifying for me presenting this to you, but it'll be entertaining for all of you watching. So let me pick one of these use cases that you gave to me. Let's say suggesting some Python code. I think that's a good use case. Let's try it. Let's say I want to create a Python code to give me, let's see, if you have any ideas, also put them in the chat. What kind of Python code you'd like me to generate? But I'll think of something off the top of my head. Let's say we want a Python code that can count down from 10 to 1. Something super simple. All right, so generate Python code that can count down and print the numbers from 10 to 1. Super simple. You can do so many more fancy things in ChatGPT for your work. But look at that. Let's say you had no idea how to code in Python. It gave you the answer right there. You can plug into whatever virtual environment you use. That right there is the T part of my acted framework. So ACTED, T stands for task. How we usually use ChatGPT is we have it run tasks for us. We give it something to do, and it gives us to us. Input in and output out. Very simple. This is the fundamental mandatory requirement for any prompt. Give it a task. So let's give it a task more relevant for the topic of our workshop now. Let's ask it to create a data presentation for me. Let's say I wanted to create a presentation for all of you on how to use generative AI for data storytelling. I wanted to create a whole slide deck that I could distribute to all of you in the audience. Let's have ChatGPT create that for me right now. So here's my prompt. Generate a slide deck for a workshop on generative AI for data storytelling. Again, this is the T part of the framework, the task, what I want ChatGPT to do. Here it is creating the slide deck, and there we go. Title slide, introduction, agenda, what is this? Generative models. This is a pretty great overview of what generative AI is, and then how we can use it to create data stories. Awesome. 13 slides, even Q&A, even gave me the structure to use to present this all to you. Fantastic. I don't need to do any work. Well, at this point, what we would do is probably copy these slides, paste it into PowerPoint, Google Slides, whatever medium you prefer for your tool of choice in presentation. But I'm going to blow your mind a little more. You don't need to create slides anymore either. ChatGPT and some other tools I'll show you can do all of that for you. No work required on your part. There's a cool tool called Markdown Preview Enhanced. It uses code called Markdown, which many of you in the audience might be familiar with already. Analysts, scientists, engineers use it to create reports, documentation, slides. And the principle is everything is code. All the text you see, all the fonts, the formatting, visuals, it's all code. And if it's code, AI can write that code for you. Let me show you. So here's the next prompt. Again, task. Use Markdown Preview Enhanced. And again, since ChatGPT is trained on the whole data of the internet, it knows what this is. Use Markdown Preview Enhanced in Visual Studio Code. That's my coding environment. You can see that on the right-hand side right here. That's Visual Studio Code that I'll be using to run and display the results of my code. So use Markdown Preview Enhanced in Visual Studio Code to generate Markdown in a code block for a slide deck based on the outline you created. Okay, so using the outline I created, give me all the slides. Be sure to use Markdown Preview Enhanced. This is a bit of complicated notation. This is just me reminding it how to create slides. Sometimes it gets this wrong when I tested it out. This is just a friendly reminder. As a delimiter at the beginning of each slide. Okay, I'm getting some comments. Your screen is black. You can't see what it's presenting. Okay, thank you. So everybody hopefully can still see the screen. So I'll be continuing with this demo. So what you should see ideally is on the left-hand side, ChatGPT running, showing the live demo of the prompts I'm giving it. And on the right-hand side is Visual Studio Code, where I'll be shortly putting in all the code. So here you can see in a few seconds, ChatGPT gave me all the code for every single slide that it recommended I include in this presentation. Look at that. Let's see what this looks like. And this is the magic of the Markdown Preview Enhanced tool I'm about to show you. Copy, paste. Now, because I've already installed the plugin called Markdown Preview Enhanced in this environment, I can see what this looks like. So I'm just going to close this. And if all of you followed the instructions for the workshop before this point, there will be an opportunity to do that later on if you haven't. But if you have, you can click this button at the top, which should be visible, and you can see what it looks like. So there's every single slide. As I scroll up and down, it can show me what each of them looks like. So let's start at the beginning. Generative AI for data storytelling workshop. This is what I'm presenting to you all of you today. I can insert my name and affiliation. What is generative AI? Models overview, pros and cons of each type, data storytelling basics, visual content with AI, workshop activity, best practices for data storytelling and AI, case studies, all of which I'm going to be showing you in this workshop. So this is a pretty good outline already. And the thank you. Look at that. That's pretty fantastic. But something still feels a bit off to me about this. And it's my responsibility as a presentation trainer to tell you this could be better. This is very generic still. And that's what you probably noticed. This could be given to any audience on generative AI for data storytelling, for any tool, ChatGPT or otherwise. The most important part of data storytelling or any presentation is the audience you're speaking to. This presentation, the prompt I gave, it doesn't know who all of you are. How can I make this a little more customized to your needs? To that end, I'm going to launch a poll that will help me better understand you as an audience. So if you wouldn't mind starting the poll, the very first one. Let's see. And this poll is how many of you attended Big Data Days before? And John, if you wouldn't mind starting that, the audience should be able to fill it out and let me know how many of you attended previous years of Big Data Days.
Good. I've opened the poll right now, Chris, so
Awesome.
people can have the opportunity to vote.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, we got 9 votes so far, 10. Awesome. 11. Excellent. Thank you all for putting in your votes. 12. I'll wait just a few more seconds to let more votes come in, and then I'll put the results into ChatGPT to better customize this deck. 13.
Good. I'm going to close the poll right now. Is that okay?
Yep, that's totally good. Thank you.
So you have some dedicated audience here.
Fantastic. All right. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to assume that 100 people are in this workshop for simplicity. So I'm going to say 77 of you said that you attended in 2023. 8 of you said you attended in 2022, and 15 said you attended in 2021. Bit of fudging here, but just for simplicity, you can always adjust this to whatever you want for your particular presentation. Let's say I give this information to ChatGPT to create a better presentation for me. So let's say this, context. This is the C part of the ACTED framework, ACTED. C stands for context. Don't just give ChatGPT a task. A great add-on is the context. What is this for? What is the goal? Then it can give you better results. So in the context, I will say I'm giving a workshop at a virtual conference called Big Data Days, hosted by the Enterprise Big Data Framework, focusing on data, ML, and enterprise AI. Using the results of the poll, 77 of the audience was here in 2023, and 8 of the audience was here in 2022, and 15 of the audience was here in 2021. Okay, so there's some context, additional information about what this is about. Your task is to update the slide deck to account for the context above. Let's see what this looks like. Given more information, you could see how I could push this further, not just telling it how many people attended, but more information about the conference, the goals. And here we have our updated slide deck. So when this is done, I'll be copying and pasting this to see how it updates. All right, there we go, all finished. Let's copy this code. Let's paste it in here to see how ChatGPT accounted for that new context. All right, I'm going to scroll back. Let's see if it included any new slides. Everything looks familiar, generally speaking, until, let's see if it included a new slide. Overview, workshop activities, introduction. Okay, so in the introduction, it gave a bit more customization. So it said, welcome participants to the workshop at Big Data Days by the Enterprise Big Data Framework. Briefly introduce myself, all of that. And you can see how the more information and context you give, the better the presentation will become. But something is still missing here. The slide deck is a bit boring, and I'm sure many of you agree with me on that. There's no visuals or anything to capture my attention here. So what if I wanted to give more detail to my prompt to say exactly what I want on the slides? That's where the D part of the ACTED framework comes in. D stands for detail. You have the task, give some context around the task, and give details constraining how the task is executed. Details are important because the more constraints you give, the more creative ChatGPT can be within those constraints. So I'm going to tell ChatGPT now to help me create a presentation that includes visuals. So let's do that. And I'm going to copy the context from before just for simplicity, so I don't have to do it again. There's my context. Okay, so this is the workshop. Here's the audience. I have a CSV file called timedata.csv in the same directory as my markdown file with 2 columns. First column is year, and the second column is number, repeat, attendees. This is using the information you gave me before. Example row is 2250. I'm going to explain why I'm doing this. I'm going to pull up that CSV file on my computer. Timedata.csv. You should hopefully see it here. I'm going to replace it with the data you gave me. So 2021, 15 attended. 2022, 8 attended. 2023, 77 attended. Saved. I am not giving data to ChatGPT to create visuals with. There are many concerns in the data community about doing that in your organization. You might have very secure private data, personal information within your data sets. You don't want to give that to ChatGPT. I'm aware that in the paid versions of ChatGPT, there are some limitations. They say they won't give the data for training in their servers, but just to be safe, if you don't want to give any data to ChatGPT, you want everything to remain on your computer, this is the technique I'm going to teach you to get around that. I have the CSV on my computer. I'm going to ask ChatGPT to give me code to create the visualization, because remember, everything is code: fonts, formatting, colors, visuals, charts, and graphs. If it gives me the code, I can run that code on my computer. On the data on my computer, nothing touches ChatGPT. Simple way to easily generate charts. You don't have to do anything. So I'm telling it what my CSV looks like, the schema involved, so you can create a visual based on that schema. Your task is to update the slide deck to include a data visualization on one of the slides using the CSV described in the context. Okay, these are the details. This is the constraints I'm putting on here. Be sure the code you use for the data visualization is Vega Lite. This is just one of the languages I'm choosing. You can choose any other language, but this is the one that I found easiest for this workshop today. The workshop is also 1 hour, 45 minutes long, which is the length of our workshop today. So let's see what ChatGPT gives me. It's going to create one slide, or maybe more, data visualizations using the data I gave, that small CSV file. Maybe it'll create a line chart. We'll see. Okay. There we go. It looks like it did not create a data visualization. This is what happens in the live demo, but that's okay. We can get around it. Let me say, update the slide deck to include a data visualization of the CSV file on one of the slides using Vega Lite. Let's be even more specific. All right, ChatGPT, let's see if you work this time. Right, slide. Will it create the data visualization? Let's see. Okay, looks like it created something with JSON instead of Vega Lite. And you can see what happens here. And this is a mistake that I predicted. A little irksome thing about ChatGPT is it uses this backtick notation you can see here that I'm highlighting to delineate when code begins and when code ends. But it also indicates to ChatGPT when to stop the code block and start putting plain text. So I can't easily copy and paste the text anymore as I did before. So what I'm going to do to work around that is say, ChatGPT, use an alternative notation to the backticks. Use tildes instead, which is acceptable, to indicate when the code for Vega Lite starts and when it ends for my data visualization. So this is what I'll say. Update the slide deck for a workshop on ChatGPT for data storytelling you created so that each Vega Lite code span begins with this notation instead of this notation. Because again, the backtick makes ChatGPT give this strange formatting in plain text instead of just the code block. Has a definition for the schema, that's just Vega Lite, and closes with the notation tildes instead of the backticks. please output the code in a single code block. So the purpose of all of this is to tell ChatGPT how to properly create data visualizations using Vega Lite in one code block I can easily copy and paste. But let's see if it finally gives me the correct answer. All right, let's see. There we go. It has done it correctly, and you can see because it uses tildes instead of backticks, it smoothly gives it in one continuous code block. Thank you, ChatGPT, for cooperating today. Let's copy and paste this. Copy this code, and you're going to see very shortly what the visualization looks like. All right, let's start from the beginning. You'll probably place it at the beginning. ChatGPT for Data Storytelling Workshop. Introduction. All right, let's see. Where is the data visualization? Agenda. What is ChatGPT? ChatGPT Models Overview. Data Storytelling Basics. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Well, there it is. There's our data visualization. Created a bar graph. 2021, 2022, 2023, the year. Number of repeat attendees. Okay. Decent. And you can see the power of this. Imagine you had more data on your computer, more CSV files, and asked ChatGPT to create visualizations for all of them. There is unlimited potential here. I'm going to pause here for any questions at this point. And what I've covered so far are many parts of my ACT framework. We've covered task, we've covered context, we've covered details. Any questions on any of that so far? Right. Wait a bit in case any questions come in. And again, all we've covered so far is using ChatGPT to create our presentations for us, giving it sufficient context, giving it sufficient detail. And you can apply this to any work you have in your organization, context, task, and details.
So for everyone in the audience, you can put the questions again in the Q&A box. I know that everyone is using the chat at the moment. But if you have specific questions, then please put them into the Q&A box so far.
Awesome. I do see one. Let's see. It says, do you believe that using ChatGPT prompts to create this presentation aligns with academic institutions' expectations for students independently develop their projects from start to finish? I was talking to someone about this particular question recently, a professor at an academic institution. And they were very upset by the fact students are using ChatGPT to create their essays entirely from scratch, from start to finish. And that is a use case I do not recommend for ChatGPT. Because if you think about it, the purpose of the assignment, to have a student write an essay as an example, is to not create an essay as a product. The purpose is to help students think and learn how to articulate their thoughts. It's the process, not the output, that is the purpose of that assignment. So if students just use ChatGPT to do their work for them and not think, then that is not a good use case for ChatGPT. That's not something I would recommend. What I do recommend using ChatGPT for are two things. One is brainstorming. We all know how hard it is to look at a blank page and see the cursor blinking. ChatGPT can help you overcome that writer's block, generate ideas. So let's say I was creating this presentation for you on data storytelling. I hit a roadblock. I said, I don't know what to present. I can ask ChatGPT, what are some things an audience like this would want to hear about with respect to data storytelling? Help me brainstorm that. Then I use my expertise to put it together. Or as I've shown you here, if I already know how to build a presentation, if I already know how to build a workshop, ChatGPT can just help me do it faster. I recommend never using ChatGPT for something you don't know how to do yourself. Because if you don't know how to do it yourself, you don't know if it's good or not. So two things. Use it for brainstorming. Students can use this. Help them brainstorm ideas for their projects, and help them do tasks they already know how to do. So if they're already experts at writing an essay, help them create an outline. Then they flesh out the outline themselves. Check to make sure it's good. Awesome. Another question came in. How do we navigate the balance between using AI to enhance data storytelling and ensuring that we do not become overly reliant on technology? And that ties back to the earlier response, which is make sure that you use it as an augmentation to your skill set, not a replacement for it. There's a great fear that I hear many data professionals express to me that ChatGPT generative AI is going to take their jobs. I mean, look at what it just did. Normally, someone who codes would need to code all of this, write it out line by line. I used to code for websites to create web design. And now I see ChatGPT create that entire code within a few seconds. Naturally, I'm afraid of that. So my response, if you're worried about how to use it and not become overly reliant on it, is identify areas where your human expertise is still necessary. ChatGPT can give you pretty good generic outlines for a presentation, but my expertise on the subject is going to dictate how I teach it to you. I'm going to identify gaps in what it's said to me here. In your organization, identify what ChatGPT doesn't know about your business domain. It doesn't know what your company does. So use that knowledge to enhance the work that ChatGPT makes more efficient. And the other question that came in is the workshop recording available post this session? John, I think you can best answer that question.
Step here in for a quick moment. So the answer to this question, Badri, is absolutely yes. So we're recording the session and you will be able to watch back the commands so that you can go through it after the workshop as well.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions, I'll start moving us forward. All right. So let's keep going. And John, if you wouldn't mind launching the second poll, which is, what do you think of the data visualization? So if all of you can look at that data visualization I generated, ChatGPT rather, generated, I want to know if you like it or not. So it's a simple question. What do you think of the data visualization? Is it good or is it bad? Let's see what the consensus is. All right, a lot of votes are coming in. Most people are saying it's good. Some people are saying it's bad. All right. All right, we're getting not an overwhelming majority, but somewhat majority for good. This is interesting. Okay. So as the votes come in, would anyone like to put in the comments, in the chat, why you think the data visualization is good or bad? Share your thoughts. And in case it's difficult to see, let me just temporarily expand this so you can see a bigger view. Okay, let me go back. There's the data visualization you can see. Any thoughts in the chat why you think this visualization is good or bad? Looks like our votes have stabilized. Around 71% of people think it's good, and around 29% of people think it's bad. All right, I see some comments from before that the required date time is missing. I'm not sure if that is applicable to this graph. Okay, I see a comment from Caitlin. It's a very basic copy and paste from Excel. It certainly does look like that. Violates many data visualization concepts. Excellent. Okay, gives summarization for user previewing. Great. And Mohammed, if you could expand on what data visualization concepts do you feel this visualization violates? Okay, it can help complex data be more understandable to people. There's a lot of thoughts around here about if this visualization is good or bad. I personally think it's bad. And that's because if you look at it, look at how slanted these years are. That's uncomfortable for you to read. I would much rather have it be horizontal so you can easily read 2021, 22, and 2023. There's also these grid lines here. For such a sparse data set, why do we need grid lines present? What if I remove those grid lines, remove this y-axis entirely, and just labeled exactly what these values are? Then you don't need to struggle to figure out, oh, that first bar, is it 18, 17? I can't really tell. Or 2022 bar, is that 10? If I just put the exact number above the bar, so much more simple. And why have this slanted text as well for the y-axis? Why not just put a clear title above indicating what the takeaway of this message, of this visualization is? But my opinion is not certainly the best one or the only one. I am sure that many of you in the audience have data visualization experts, data storytelling experts that you admire in the field. If you can put in the comments who those are, I'm going to use it for something fun, a very fun exercise upcoming. So put in the comments, if you have a data visualization expert, data storytelling expert, guru, person in the field you really admire, put their name in the chat and I'll be using it. Let's see some more of these comments that came in the meantime. Missing scale, legend, etc. Okay. Simple and good for quick info. it should be immediately understood. And that's what I agree with. If we, for example, were to take away the grid lines, take away the y-axis, and just put data labels instead, the scale, as pointed out before, would be immediately understandable. Right. Any thoughts for people in the field you really admire who speak on this subject of great data visualization or storytelling? And if not, I do have some in mind for myself. All right. While that happens, I'm going to scroll back so we can do our fun exercise. All right. So I'm going to put in some people in the field I really admire in terms of data visualization and storytelling. Those people are people like Cole Nussbaumer-Knaflic, who wrote Storytelling with Data. Many of you may be familiar with. She wrote the book that overviews many of the principles I just taught to you. Don't have all those grid lines if they're unnecessary, sparse data set. Label the bars directly. Don't slant all your text labels to make it uncomfortable to read. There's also Brent Dykes, who talks a lot about data storytelling. His book, Effective Data Storytelling, is fantastic for breaking down these subjects. There's also Nick Deborah, who recently published his book, Practical Charts, and it overviews a whole litany of data visualizations and how to do them well. What I'd like to do is consider, yeah, perfect. Brent Dykes is mentioned. That's very kind of you to mention my name. I'm going to use the others just for this presentation. Now, normally, if we wanted insights from these people in the field, these great people in the field, you have to pay them to give you those insights, right? To have them review a visual like this in your company, you'd have to pay them to do that. But what if you could get their knowledge and wisdom for free? Remember that ChatGPT is trained on the data of the internet. It has analyzed their blogs, their books even, probably. So it knows, to an extent, how they think. What if I asked ChatGPT to pretend to be them and then criticize this data visualization, which I'll bring up one more time here. And again, what if I asked it, ChatGPT, pretend to be these monumental figures in the field. I want you to help me criticize this data visualization using their knowledge and wisdom. But let's take it a step further. Let's do something that's not humanly possible because we're dealing with artificial intelligence. What if I asked ChatGPT to pretend to be a person, one person, who has knowledge of all of those people, some super data visualization expert pro? And let's get an answer from that person. So here's what that looks like. Act as a data visualization expert with the knowledge of these people I mentioned: Cole, Baumer, Knaflic, Nick Deborah, who wrote Practical Charts, Brent Dykes, who wrote Effective Data Storytelling, all these figures in the field. Let's say one expert has knowledge of all these people, and Brent Dykes, with deep expertise in how to choose the right chart, how to make the message clear in data visualizations, and how to tell stories with data. This is the A part of my acted framework, act as. So we covered C for context, T for task, D for details, A stands for act as. This is one of the most powerful parts of ChatGPT. Don't just ask it to do tasks for you, have it pretend to be people. Don't just have it pretend to be you and act and create a presentation. Have it be someone else, an expert, to evaluate how you did. So now that I've gotten that, let's put in the context. I'm just going to briefly scroll up to get the previous context so I don't need to copy and paste it again. Excuse the scrolling. So here's my context. I'm going to copy paste that here. There we go. Your task is broken down into 2 steps. So again, I have to act as the expert. Here's some context about the event, some people who attended before. Your task is broken down into 2 steps. Step 1, evaluate the slide deck generated, critique it harshly by discussing how it falls short, and offer tailored, actionable advice. Step 2, update the slide deck for a workshop on ChatGPT for data storytelling to address all the critiques, and implement all the actionable advice you gave. Take your time and do this step by step. So you see what I've done here for the task. This is very important. Don't just ask ChatGPT to do a task that is a very long and complicated one. Break it down into steps. Have it let you see how it does each of those steps. You can fine-tune and tweak it in between. So let's have ChatGPT do these 2 steps in sequence, take its time, and do it well. All right, here we go. And this is the part I love, because when you have ChatGPT to pretend to be an expert and give critiques, you can see what the critiques look like. Something you might be scared to ask someone, a real person, about. But now I can give it to you in a safe environment. All right, here, let's read through these critiques. Overall, the slide deck provides a good structure for the workshop, covering important topics, but there are several improvements that can be made. Lack of visual appeal. I agree. There's only one data visualization. We can do much better. There could be images, diagrams, and charts as well to make this more engaging. Absence of data visualizations, yes. We gave one CSV file. Why not give more? Limited interactivity. I like this. Incorporate interactive elements throughout the workshop. Exercises, group discussions, live demonstrations can increase engagement and facilitate better learning outcomes. So the outline that it gave me is just a lecture telling you all these things. Why not make it more interesting? Lack of personalization. Perfect. So it doesn't really understand you as the audience. Using examples, discussions, things you're interested in would make this workshop more impactful. Now, look at what happened. It took all those critiques and it said, how can we fix the slide deck based off of it? I don't have to do any work. It's going to correct itself. So I'm going to copy this code. Let's paste it here and see how it changes it. Okay, that looks largely the same. The data visualization itself looks largely the same, but we can see if we push this further, ask ChatGPT, hey, fix this so that the data label appears above the bar instead of the y-axis, remove this. All of that is possible. Okay, largely it did not update in terms of visuals. It gave some actionable advice. Okay, introduce interactive elements such as live demonstrations, group exercises. I like it. A note for myself, perhaps not to show the audience. Examples, effective data storage. So it's emphasizing give more examples. Excellent. ChatGPT models overview. What is this agenda? All right. So you get the picture of this format, this method I've taught you. It's don't just ask ChatGPT to execute a task. For example, create a presentation as you would at work. Ask ChatGPT to pretend to be an expert and critique your work. Critique the work it gave you. So then before you even go to present, you know if it'll be good or not. And if I continue to iterate this process, you can imagine how much better this slide deck would become. But as was pointed out, and this is very important, lack of personalization. This workshop still is not good enough. How to make it better is better understanding all of you here. So John, if you wouldn't mind starting the other two polls, there are two more I'd like to do. You could do them one at a time if that's easiest. Poll 3 is, what role do you have? So I can better understand who the roles that you have in this audience. Are you data analysts, scientists, managers? And the second poll that will start afterwards is, what do you want to gain from this workshop? By understanding your audience, the most important part of a data story, you can make them more compelling. Let's check out what these look like. All right, votes are coming in. We got a lot of managers here, which is excellent. And these are learnings that you can pass on to your team. 50% so far of the people who've responded are data team managers. Excellent. Perfect. Well, I'm going to, while the votes are coming in, pull up some CSV files where I'm going to customize the data to what you gave me. So data analysts, 21%. I'm going to assume we have 100 attendees and there are 21 exactly as an absolute value. 29 and 50.
Christopher, would you like me to run poll 4 right away as well?
Yes, that works.
Okay.
I'll close poll 3 and yeah, poll 4 works. Thank you. All right, I got the data I needed for poll 3. So who is in the audience? It looks like mostly managers. And let's look at what it looks like for poll 4, which is, what do you want to gain from this workshop? So I can better understand your needs and best address them. Awesome. So most of the votes are going to how to prompt generative AI better. Fantastic. Second so far is data storytelling. While those results are coming in, I'm going to briefly copy this context so I can reuse it. All right. Awesome. Votes are still coming in, and I'm going to right now put those results in my next CSV file on my computer. And again, this method where I don't put the data into ChatGPT directly and I have it generate charts, which you can do in the paid subscription. Or as of yesterday, I believe, they've given you the possibility to use ChatGPT 4.0 to, with a limited capacity, analyze data and create charts. Instead of doing that, you can have ChatGPT give you the code for these visualizations so you can run it on the data on your computer that stays safe. All right, so I'm going to assume that all the votes so far have come in. Right now we have 65 for wanting generative AI, 20 for wanting data storytelling, and 15 for wanting data visualization. Fantastic. So there's my data. What I'm going to do now is, using the information you've given me, enhance this workshop, make it more applicable to you. Let's see what ChatGPT does with this new context and information. Act as an audience of data professionals. Notice what I'm doing here. This is an extension of the act as method I taught you before. Don't just have it act as you to create a presentation. Don't just have it act as an expert in the field to criticize it. The most important part of data storytelling is your audience. Have it be your audience, and then have them critique it. So you can be best prepared when you speak to that future audience to do a great job. So act as an audience of data professionals. One survey revealed most are interested in understanding how to prompt generative AI better. A second survey revealed most have the role of data team managers. Thank you for that information. So here's the context that I copied and pasted before. This is the workshop at Big Data Days. Here's my CSV file. I'm going to add information about the other CSV files that I showed you before. I have a CSV file called attendees1 CSV in the same directory as my markdown file. The reason I'm saying that is in the code. Sometimes ChatGPT will give a URL to the CSV file saying path to CSV. I'm telling it it's in the same directory. You don't need to do that. Same directory as my markdown file with 2 columns. Again, I'm giving the schema so it knows what kind of code to generate to create this data visualization. The first column is role, and the second column is number attendees. Right? An example row is data analyst 70. So it knows what it looks like. I have a final CSV file called attendees2.csv in the same directory as my markdown file with 2 columns. The first column is goal, and the second column is number attendees. An example row is generative AI 70. You can see how you can extend this to whatever data you have in your organization and whatever schema it has. Your task is to update the slide deck based on the audience, context, and details below. These are the details. And here's where I get very specific about what I want, because remember, the more detail you give ChatGPT in your prompts, the better output, the more customized output, the more personalized output it can give you. These are the details. Keep the data visualization you created for timedata.csv. I want that. Add 2 new data visualizations for attendees1.csv and attendees2.csv. For the data visualizations, use Vega Lite. And you can change this to whatever language you prefer. This is what I use here. Be sure each Vega Lite code span begins with, and this is again the little nitpick I have about ChatGPT and how it outputs code, instead of the backtick. Okay, has a definition for schema and closes with the notation, the tildes instead of the backticks. Okay, be sure there is maximum 1 data visualization per slide. I don't want it to be too complex and stuffed, 1 per slide. The workshop is 1 hour, 45 minutes long. Let's see what it gives to me. It's mega prompt. All right. So just scrolling through, let's see. Okay, it's creating its first data visualization for attendance trends. Looks like it created a bar chart for the time data, same as before. Fair enough. Here's a new data visualization for your roles that you gave to me. Create another bar chart. And here's the visualization for your goals that you gave to me. Another bar chart. All right, let's see what they look like very shortly. All right, here we go. I'm going to copy this, paste it, and see what this workshop slide deck looks like. All right, let's go back. All right, it didn't heed my detail to please put one data visualization per slide. I could specify that, but for the purposes of time, I'll keep it here for now. So you can see, and I'll just briefly expand this, how they look. Again, it's using that principle I don't really like, which is it's slanting all the text. It's not labeling the bars directly, but you can see the data being visualized, which helps people very quickly see complex information. Future trends and challenges, case studies, best practices. Awesome. So it looks like it's stuffed everything there. You can see how I can push this further. If I really wanted to create a fantastic slide deck for all of you to have at the end of this workshop, I would ask ChatGPT to please apply all those data visualization principles I shared with you before, to please put some more images, diagrams on these slides to make it more visually compelling. And that way, it would be material personalized to your needs. All right, I'm going to pause here for any questions. And at this point, again, what we've covered is almost all 5 parts of the ACTED framework. We've covered act as, one of my favorite parts, pretend to be anyone you want, an expert in the field yourself, your audience, context around your task, the task itself, and D for details, any details you want to constrain ChatGPT's output. So at this point, I'll pause for any questions. Feel free to put them in the Q&A. All right, let's see. I love the comments here, which are act as the world's best stock trader to help with some trading advice. You can apply this methodology I've taught you to anything you want, which makes it so powerful. All right, here are some questions that have come up. Matipa's question is, does this not demonstrate evidence of learning as instruction prompts to ChatGPT reveal a multifaceted skill set? Okay, if I understand the question correctly, it's saying prompting is an art in itself, which yes, it is. The framework I'm teaching you today, ACTED, act as, context, task, the E I'm going to reveal shortly, and D, details. There are many other frameworks out there, but it is an art. There's a bit of a science to it. You can, for example, put the context section in different places. You can put it before the task. Some frameworks recommend. You could put it after the task. Some frameworks recommend. For example, there's a framework called GCA, Goal, Context, Action, variant of what I'm teaching you today. There, the context is before the action. Or TRACE, which is task, result, action, consequence, I believe, and then something else that starts with E, which probably is what I'm going to teach you. You can see there are different variations of this, but all of them tie back to the principles I'm teaching you, which is give as much detail as possible to ChatGPT so it can give better outputs. The next question is, can I ask to use Viz from datavizcatalog.com? Now, ordinarily, before ChatGPT 4.0 came out just yesterday, so I haven't explored that too much, but from what I understand before that point, ChatGPT 3.5 could not browse the internet for you. I tried, it was not very successful. That might have changed. What I'm aware of is that for ChatGPT 4, the paid subscription, you can browse the internet. So you could potentially have it browse the internet, ask it a question, find a website, pull something from it, and then put it into your slide deck. Maybe even if the image is hosted in a repository, you can get the URL for that and then paste that in your slide deck to be displayed. So definitely potentially possible. The next one, the question is, what plugin is generating the output from VS Code? Awesome. So we're going to shortly be going into a break. And during that break, if you haven't already, please do check out the attached materials to this workshop session. There's a PowerPoint deck, which gives you some resources to download, such as Visual Studio Code, and plugins to install, including what I'm going to show you here, which is Markdown Preview Enhanced. This is the plugin that's doing all the magic for me today. So this plugin, Markdown Preview Enhanced in Visual Studio Code, looks like this, kind of rainbowy. That's what lets me take this code that I've written and preview it on the side. So if you haven't already, do download Markdown Preview Enhanced. All right, the last question so far is, since it says it can auto prompt generate, how is it going to impact these principles? I'm not too sure I understand the question. If you can clarify that, that would be great. All right, we're at the top of the hour. As people come back in, I'm going to be answering some of the questions that have come up during the break. So thank you, Badri, for clarifying your question. that Anthropic announced we can use the framework for auto prompt generation, and you're asking from that context. I haven't heard about Anthropic's announcement, but what I can share is that a cool use case for ChatGPT, in addition to what I've shown you so far, you saw how I said act as a data visualization expert or act as my audience. A cool use case is have ChatGPT act as a prompt engineer, a ChatGPT prompt engineer. Have it write a prompt for you to do whatever you want. Then it can give you something really optimized for that purpose. So in essence, I don't have to think to write prompts. I can have ChatGPT do that work for me as well by pretending to be a prompt engineer. So something to take into consideration. Let's see. Another question that came up is, can you share your comments on the concern of plagiarism in the generated storytelling outcomes, as well as the, oops, I think I might have closed that accidentally. Okay, can you share your comments on the concern of plagiarism in the generated storytelling outcomes, as well as the extensive input efforts required for ChatGPT comparatively? So as you can see here, it takes a lot of effort to get ChatGPT to give you something decent. I still am not happy with the slide deck it gave to me. Regarding plagiarism, I have a lot of thoughts surrounding the ethics of ChatGPT. After all, it was trained on the data from the internet, trained on art that artists put their blood, sweat, and tears into creating. And ChatGPT and other generative AI can just create images similar to that for free. There are a lot of ethics around that that I disagree with. In terms of the output that it generates, however, focusing just on that, the best use case of ChatGPT is helping you do what you already know how to do well, as we talked about before. So for example, for creating a story, it can help you tweak it, critique it, but ultimately the final output has to be yours. So instead of asking ChatGPT, help me get sources from another place on a great data story and let me copy and paste that, ChatGPT can help you make it your own. That's something really powerful about it. Make your work more efficient and make it more your own by helping you brainstorm, think out of the box. And let's see, I think there was one more question. What are your thoughts on Google Gemini? I felt that I've gotten better responses from it over ChatGPT ever since I started using both of them. I haven't used Gemini, but I hear a lot of promising results about ChatGPT 4.0, which was recently released yesterday, that it can now analyze not only text, but also images and also videos, which is amazing. I mean, think about what I did here. I had code generate the data visualizations. And then I asked ChatGPT to evaluate what that looks like. But imagine what I could do if I showed it a picture of the graph from before. So if I were to just go to the end of this slide deck and show you those visuals, imagine if I took a picture of that, showed it to ChatGPT, maybe it would give better results. Something I haven't tried. I don't have the paid version of ChatGPT, but imagine I can do that now with ChatGPT 4.0. Give it that image, say critique it as a data visualization expert. How powerful that would be. So definitely a lot of improvements since ChatGPT's last update. All right, let's move into part 2. And this is the hands-on interactive portion of the workshop that I'm super excited about. I want to start this portion by giving you a revelation. Everything I've done up to this point hasn't been data storytelling. Again, everything I've done in this slide deck, this workshop presentation, has not been data storytelling. There's a misconception that data storytelling is just visuals over time shown in a presentation. As an analogy, think about this. If I would tell you a story like this, I went to the grocery store yesterday. I bought some sweet potatoes. I was about to leave the grocery store, but I went back and realized I forgot my frozen broccoli. Then I went and paid for it. Is that a story? That's a sequence of events that you can visualize over time, but it's not really a story, is it? And the reason for that is a story centers on an insight. A story centers on an insight. That's what differentiates stories from just anecdotes, like I just told you, going to the grocery store. Think about the last movie that you watched. That was a story, a fictional story. For example, many of you might be fans of the Avengers series. The very first Iron Man movie that came out in 2008. What is the insight? What is the theme? What is the moment of change that happened in the story? Before that, things were a certain way. After that, things were a certain way. You could think of it as the moment where the main character is taken hostage by terrorists and asked to build weapons for them. He refuses. He realizes his morality. And he realizes it's his mission to not just be selfish in life, as he was before that moment of change, but it's his mission to help other people. As another example, many of you may be fans of Spider-Man. In all the Spider-Man movies, at least the very first one, showing the origin story, the theme, the insight, the moment of change is responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. Before that moment, the main character, Peter Parker, is just an average, nerdy kid. After the moment of change, he realizes he has responsibility. When his uncle dies because he didn't take action, he realizes it's his responsibility to use his powers for good after the change. Storytelling is all about that. Some big insight you discovered as an analyst, as a scientist, as a manager. There's a moment of change here that I can use to help my organization do things differently, do things better. Before that moment of change, we're bad. We're not doing so well. After that moment of change I'm going to tell you about, then we can do things better in a more optimal way. That's data storytelling. That's what I'm going to show you now. Let's use a new use case. So not just this slide deck for a workshop on data storytelling, but let's use a use case that might be more familiar to you in your organization. So here is that use case. I'm going to start a new thread for this just for simplicity. So let me just delete this. And here's a new chat. Act as, and here I'm going to use the steps of the ACT framework I've taught you so far. Act as the manager of a data team in a hospital specializing in lung cancer treatment. Okay, so there's the act as. Here's the context. This is the story that I'm going to start to tell you. Your team created an AI that the hospital uses to identify malignant versus benign tumors from images. Over the past quarter, you notice the AI identified an anomalously high number of malignant tumors. This looks bad. A lot of people are getting more malignant tumors than usual. You suspect there may be an increase in cancer prevalence in a certain population. So now maybe we need to take action based on this insight. I have a CSV file called tumor prevalence.csv. I'll show it to you all shortly. In the same directory as my markdown file with 2 columns. Again, I'm showing the schema of the data file so it knows what code to give me to visualize it. The first column is quarter, and the second column, oops, spelled that, quarter, and the second column is percentage of malignant tumors. An example row is Q1 2022 1. Okay. Your task, this is the T part of the framework, your task is to use Markdown, Preview, Enhanced, and Visual Studio Code to generate Markdown in a code block for a slide deck. Oops, extra period. Details. Add one data visualization for tumor prevalence.csv using Vega Lite. And the final detail, limit your output to 3 slides only, just for simplicity, so we can easily see the changes that are about to happen. I'm going to limit this to 3 slides. You can put whatever details you want when you eventually apply this framework on your own. So let's run this. And before I do, I want you all to look in the workshop resources that you hopefully downloaded before the workshop or during the break. You should have a file, a TXT file called workshop prompt 1. It has everything I just typed. What I'd like you to do is open up ChatGPT on your own computer, on your own browser, and have fun with this. Copy that prompt and paste it using all the acted framework that we've done before, and let's see what it does for you. All right, so everybody, go to workshop prompt 1 TXT, copy and paste the prompt, which is exactly what I've typed here, and run it on your own computer. I'm going to run it here. If ChatGPT cooperates with me today, hopefully it does. And if you have any questions on what's included in the workshop resources, put it in the chat. I'll be looking at. Awesome. Looks like it's working for some people. Doesn't look like it's working for me. Hopefully it will. All right, and again, if anybody's having any issues at any part of this process, just put a comment in the chat, and I'll try and help address it. Well, this is unfortunate that ChatGPT is not cooperating at this critical point of the live session, but I'm going to tell you what it should look like. If any of you have run this code, you're going to get a problem. It's going to look like that error I showed you before. It's going to give you a code block, and then it's going to give you plain text. All right, so please try again. Okay, there we go. So let's see if it gives the problem that I mentioned before. It's going to split the code because it forgot that I don't like the backtick notation. I prefer the tilde notation to prevent the code block from being broken up. And the reason, you can see that happened here, the reason that happens is because I started a new thread. It forgot all the context that it learned. Look at that. I don't want it to do that. I could tell it again to avoid that problem, but here's where I'm going to teach you the most important part of that framework of all. ACTED. Yeah, so Chu mentioned it has code blocks for you. You're entering into Gemini, great. We can do some comparisons. The E part of the acted framework, the final piece that I'm going to teach you is example. If you give ChatGPT an example of what you want it to look like, it's going to give you a much better output than if you didn't, because then it knows exactly the formatting and everything. So I'm going to give it an example of a good slide with all the formatting I like, and it will replicate that and not have all of this. So let me type that in. Let me use an example. Let me, for simplicity, just copy all of this, and then I'm going to put an example below it. So here, act as, same thing, context, so we can directly compare what it looks like with the example. Below is an example of a great slide with a data visualization that you should follow the style of, particularly for this notation to separate slides, and this notation for delineating vagal light, not with backticks. All right, so here I'm going to create that, and for simplicity, so you don't all have to watch me struggle to figure out how to copy and paste this, I'm just going to copy and paste what this looks like from my notes, because I would mess up constantly. So here is a slide that we used in a previous presentation together, an example of a good slide. Timedata.csv, you remember that's the visualization of how many attendees in this audience attended previous Big Data Days. I've taken that example of a good slide with a notation I like, and I've copied and pasted it here for ChatGPT. All right, details. This is constraints. Output the code in a single code block. Add a data visualization for tumor prevalence at CSV on one of the slides. Limit your output to 3 slides only. So let's see what this looks like. With the example, now I have all 5 parts of the acted framework. Act as, context, task, example of a good slide, details. And there you go, one single code block, because it understands how to properly format it. Now we need to tell it what to do. It knows based on the example. Let's see what this looks like. All right. Okay, so here's our title slide. It created a line graph. Again, I don't like the slanted notation, but we can correct that. Created a line graph showing the tumor prevalence. And here is what that looks like, just so you can visualize. Here is the data I have on my computer. You can imagine if you have time series data for your workplace, you can replace that here when you create presentations. So I'm just saying the percentage of malignant tumors was 1% all these quarters, and then it became 10. So this is a concern. Here's our insight. And then it's talking about the summary, and then it's talking about key actions to take next. So here's what's happened. Here's why it's important. Here's what we need to do about it. Great start. Now, what I'd like all of you to do, if you haven't already, to achieve what I've done, is if you have Visual Studio Code open, do what I did. Copy this code. You can create a new text file here, and then copy and paste as I've done. Very easy to do. On the side, to open up the preview, you can click this button here. It should look like a window pane with a magnifying glass, and that should open the preview. If you have any problems doing any of that so far, please do put it in the chat. So again, the workflow is take the prompt from ChatGPT, copy the code, create a new text file in Visual Studio Code, paste it, and you can preview it using this icon here. If you have any problems, put it in the chat. I'll just wait to make sure everybody is up to speed. And Mohammed, if you have gotten better responses in Gemini, do let us all know. While I'm waiting for everybody to get up to speed with using ChatGPT, the prompting, the copy and pasting, the Visual Studio Code, perfect, thank you, Chu. I'm going to show you something really cool, which is how you can convert this to a PDF. It's one thing to generate code in a preview, but how do you use it? So if everybody's at this point, you right-click the preview. There are all these options. You see there's an export option. In the workshop resources instructions, I had you all download prints. There are instructions to do that in the workshop resources. Prints is what will generate our PDFs of our slide deck. So you could then present it or tweak it. From this point, you can click this PDF prints. It will generate a URL link to the folder, to the file. So I'm going to copy this. If you go to any browser you have, you can then copy and paste this here. Of course, remove all the text. Just keep the URL. Remove all that excess text around it. I'm just keeping the file URL that it generated for me, the PDF of my slide deck. And the one other thing you have to be very, very, very careful of when you're doing this, at least in Chrome, in the file URL, there is this backslash. And there you cannot view the PDF unless you delete that backslash. Okay, so again, the procedure is right-click on the preview, go to export, prints. It will generate this URL, paste it in the browser, delete that backslash. Then you should get something that looks like this, okay, which is your slide deck as a PDF. You can now print it, save as PDF, print it. You can see here. Okay, thanks Ryan for confirming it all works. So you can see here, if you pretty up this slide deck, you have all the content you like, you can immediately make this a PDF that you can then present to your organization. Now, let's say you want to further edit this, make some tweaks yourself manually. That's totally fine. Let's say you don't like where this placement of the title is. Once you could export this to PDF, it's a bit of a clunky workflow, but you can use this free Adobe tool to convert it to a PowerPoint. And then you can edit that in your Microsoft PowerPoint on your computer. Bit clunky, I know, but this is the free way to easily create slide decks from scratch without you needing to do anything. So again, process is, once you've exported the slide deck, convert it to a PDF, then convert it to PowerPoint using this free Adobe tool. Perfect. Thank you, Chu, for confirming. PDF is generated. You can use this URL I'm going to paste in the chat to convert that PDF you generated, Chu, and everyone else who's followed up this point, to a PowerPoint, and then you can edit that PowerPoint file on your computer. Right. Awesome. So now that everybody is hopefully up to speed, I'm going to also condense this. Let's move forward. I'm going to slowly segue to you writing these prompts on your own. What I want to do is something we haven't done yet before for these slides, which is make them look nice. These slides look pretty ugly. I mean, it's pretty conventional font and bolding and text and all that. Look at all the size differences here. If you wanted it to align with, let's say, the style guidelines in your organization, how would you do that? Well, this is how you would do it. I'm going to go to ChatGPT here. Remember, everything is code. The fonts, the colors, the formatting. And if it is, ChatGPT can write that code for you. Formatting is also code. I'm going to show you that. So based on the slide deck you created, your task is to output one single code block containing the slide deck and CSS code for the styling. Details. The top of the code block should have code defining the styles of the slide to give a more professional look, let's say. You could change this to whatever you like between style tags. And so that you don't have to copy and paste this for everyone listening, workshop prompt3.txt in your list of resources has the whole prompt I'm typing out. So go to your list of resources in the zip file, find workshop prompt 3. You can copy and paste it to get exactly what I'm going to show you here. So I'm going to type this out. As you go find that, use the reveal class when defining CSS. The bottom of the same code block should have the exact same code for the slide deck. There you go. So workshop prompt 3 has all of this. And if you run it, you should get a very similar result to me, which is this beautiful piece of code at the top. All these classes define how the headings should look, how the paragraphs should look, colors, all of this beautiful stuff. And you can imagine if your organization has certain color guidelines, brand colors, logos, you can all define that here with further prompting. Let's copy this and see how this changes. Okay, so it slightly changed the color, you notice, slightly changed the font size. Okay, awesome. And you can see how I can further push this in whatever direction I want. Awesome, thanks, Chu. And for everyone else who's followed so far, I would like you to put in the comments, what else would you like to change with respect to the formatting? I'd like you to write your own prompt at this point. You can use the same structure I've done so far, task and details. Figure out what you'd like to change in your slide deck that you've generated. Would you want the font size to be bigger? Would you want the color of the heading to be different? Ask ChatGPT to change that for you. And when you're done, share your prompt in the comments and we'll try it out together. So I'll give about a minute for everybody to do that. And if you would like to share your prompt, please do feel free to put it in the chat and we can see how it looks. Ooh, the question is, can we include animated GIFs in the generated slides too? If you have the file on your computer to the GIF or the PNG, I believe you can. I haven't tested it, but in the same way I could read in a CSV with code and visualize it, I imagine you can do the same. Absolutely. Thanks, Chu. Ooh, I like that. Thank you, John. Let's do that. So I'm going to take John's prompt. Let's do that. Make the presentation. Let's do this. Update the slide deck. Update the code for the slide deck so that it uses different shades of green in line with the big data framework logo. Okay, so let's see if it does it. Okay. There it goes, creating data visualization, creating the summary slide, key action slide. Okay, let's see if it changed it to green in alignment with the big data days logo. All right, there we go. Change it to green. You can see how you can push this for your organization. It could be big data days to make it the colors that you want. It could be your corporate colors. Awesome. What I'd like to do now is have you write a full acted framework prompt. So ACTD, and I'm going to have you do it in the way that I taught you before. Remember that one of the most powerful ways to use ChatGPT is have it pretend to be your audience. So not just you creating the presentation, not just an expert evaluating it, but your audience, who is the most important part of your data story. I would like you to write a prompt. ACTD, you can exclude the E for now. ACTD, act as the audience of this presentation that I've created. So remember that we are the manager of a data team specializing in lung cancer treatment. You can use a lot of this if you prefer. Remember, the act as should be act as the audience you're speaking to your technical team. So act as the technical team, give some context about what this is, have the task be critique the presentation that was generated harshly, give some actionable advice, put any details you'd like. So I'll give you a minute or two to work on this. When you're ready, share in the comments what your prompt looks like, and we'll test it out. So remember, A, C, T, and D, act as the audience, the technical team you're presenting to as this manager. Give some context about the event. The task is to critique it, give any details you want. And all the prompts I've done so far are in your zip file of resources as workshop prompts 1, 2, and 3 that you can use for reference. And if you're working on it, also feel free to put in snippets of it. So you could put in just the A section, just the C section, just the T section in the comments, and we can work on it together. I'll give about a little less than a minute to finish up. Awesome. Thank you for sharing, John. Act as the organizer of a global conference. I like it. Review the slide deck. Fantastic. I'm going to copy and paste that. Excellent. So act as the organizer of a global conference. Review the slide deck. I'm going to enhance this with a few things so that we can go through our framework. So act as the organizer of a global conference. I'm going to remind it of the context so it doesn't forget. I'm just going to copy the context that I used before. And the reason I do this is just out of habit. ChatGPT has a limited window of memory. So after a certain time, if you keep prompting, it will begin to forget things. So I like just using the context that I've used before. So act as the organizer of a global conference. Here's your context about what I'm doing, what the situation is. Review the slide deck created by the presenters during the conference, critique it for excellence, ensuring that remains vendor neutral. Perfect. So let's do that. And then also style the presentation to be in line with the colors of the big data framework. What I'd also like to do is, let's see. I'm going to add one more line, which I recommend you do for everybody typing their own prompts. Take a deep breath and do this step by step. Research has shown that this line can improve the accuracy of your prompts significantly. And if you think about it, ChatGPT is trained on data from the internet. It's trained on data where if you tell people to take their time, take a deep breath, they will give better answers. So if you tell ChatGPT to be more human, take a deep breath, take its time, do this, it will give you better answers too. So let's see what this gives us. All right, and you can see everybody who's tried this so far, to act as your audience, act as the organizer of a global conference, all the critiques that could come of that. Clearly states the topic of the presentation, look for clarity and explain the context and problem statement. These are all good things to look out for when evaluating presentations. Check out for references to specific vendors. Remember, we said, please check that it remains vendor neutral. So here it's saying check for any references to specific vendors or proprietary technologies, replace them with generic terms if needed. Evaluate the visualization for clarity and accuracy. Ensure it remains with the color of the big data framework. Here's an action plan. I love this. Think about all the times you give a presentation. You have no idea if it's going to be successful. But with ChatGPT, you can pretend to be the audience, empathize with them, and figure out what to do without even asking them. And you can come in prepared for any questions that they have as well. Awesome. So let's say the story moves forward a little bit. Let's say you use this framework I've taught you. You've gotten this fantastic set of critiques. You've updated your slide deck. Let's say that the story moves forward. Your technical team investigates. They find that the percent of malignant tumors is higher, not just for one population, but for all of them, which indicates that it might not be the populations who have the problem, but the algorithm that has the problem. What I'd like you to do now is write an acted framework, ACTED, where you pretend to be a new audience. Let's say the situation escalates, you have to present to your boss. So you have to present to your boss, hey, we made a new discovery. We found that the algorithm is the problem. Create an acted framework to update the slide deck you have so far to account for that new audience. So I'll give about a minute or two to do that, and you can paste in the comments what your acted framework prompt looks like. And again, it would be act as my boss. You can define your boss, their personality, their traits, their tendencies to criticize things. You can define the context. Here's some updated context about the situation. We found that the tumor prevalence is not just one population, but all of them, indicating the algorithm might be at fault. Task is to create an updated presentation and give any details you want. You can also give an example of a good slide. Take your time to do that. I'll give about a minute or two. This one is more difficult. Yes. Let's do this. I will walk you through creating the acted framework for this particular situation. So here's what I'd like to do. Let's start with A. Act as the manager of a data team in a hospital specializing in lung cancer treatment. So this is the new audience we need to present to. So again, we have the slide deck, this nice green one that we created before. We need to update it for a new audience. We need to present to our boss, the manager. Let's say you present using the markdown code block slide deck to your technical team. The team investigates and discovers the number of malignant tumors is higher, not just for one segment of the population, but all of them. So I'm giving a bit of the story about why I need to create this new slide deck, but all of them. This finding suggests the problem is not with increasing cancer prevalence in the population, but with the algorithm itself. So this is the heart of our story that we're telling our boss about. I have the CSV file. I'm going to just copy and paste this for ease, since we already seen it before. You have the CSV file with data that you'd like to see visualized. That's just the tumor prevalence one that we've seen before. Your task is to update the markdown code block for a slide deck to address the new context. This is definitely more challenging. Thank you, Ryan. So hopefully this walkthrough will help it become more easy. You act as the audience. You give a little context about what the story is that I told you. Give the task to update the slide deck for this new context. What I can do now is give some more details about how I'd like to constrain the slide deck to be better. So details such as output the code in a single code block. Be sure to keep the code for the CSS styling at the top of the code blocks. Just keep all the nice formatting we've done before. Be sure there is a data visualization for tumor prevalence CSV on at least one slide. Limit your output to 3 slides only. So let's see. Remember, we had this nice slide deck before. 2 slides, key actions to take. Let's see how it changes to present to this new audience. This is something you might encounter in the workplace. You create all these nice slides for one audience, perhaps your team. Then you're asked to present it to the boss or even the CEO. You need to change your presentation for them to address their needs. So let's see what ChatGPT does. Remember how this looks? Because it's about to change. All right, so we changed it to a new slide with next steps. Conduct a review of the algorithm. Great, this is our action to take. Collaborate with experts to improve its reliability. Excellent. And there's our same graph. We still have the nice big data days color scheme that we specified before. Another thing I'd like to do is go over with you again how to critique this slide deck. This is a key part of the process. So not just create a slide deck like I've done here, but also critique it. So what I'd like everybody to do is create an acted framework where you pretend to be the audience, and then you have them critique the slides that were created. So you can do this on your own, and I'm also going to be walking through it right now. All right, so let's say act as the boss of the manager presenting this slide deck. What I'm going to do here is a bit fun, and this is what I recommend you do when you're using ChatGPT to present to any audience. Define who the audience is, not just their role and title, but who they are. So I'm going to have a little fun here with defining the personality of this boss I'm presenting to. Act as the boss of the manager. You are short-tempered, skeptical of problems, and do not respond well to issues that pop up from nowhere. We all know bosses like that. As the boss, and this is a little wrinkle I'll add because this might be true of people you're presenting to. As the boss, you also designed the AI algorithm, used to make the predictions between malignant versus benign tumors. and are very protective about its programming and efficacy. So you can see here, as if you're presenting to your boss or the CEO, don't just say act as the CEO or act as my boss. Define who they are. So say your boss is short-tempered, doesn't respond to issues well. Let's say they're very protective about the products they've built. You need to be very careful how you present to them then. And the ChatGPT can help you do that well. So there's my act as statement. For the context, I will just use exactly what I had before, defining the situation. Copy and paste that. The team investigated these malignant tumors. We see the problems with the algorithm itself. I have that CSV file. Now, your task is broken down into 2 steps. So this, if anybody's writing the prompt on their own, this is what your T section could look like. Step 1, evaluate the slide deck, critique it harshly by discussing how it falls short and offer tailored, actionable advice. Step 2, update the slide deck to address all the critiques and implement all the actionable advice. So what I'm doing here is have ChatGPT pretend to be my audience, critique all this work it created, and give me some advice to improve. Update the slide deck accordingly. What I'd like to do here is give an example of what a good criticism looks like. So let's say below is an example of a criticism you should follow the style of for each slide. So if you want ChatGPT to be better, define what you want precisely, an example of it. So I want ChatGPT to give me criticisms that look like this. Let's say here's an issue that it found. The first slide is poor because the title is enormous and overwhelms the whole page. That's valid. This title is pretty big on the first page. Then let's see. Let's go to the next slide. What other critiques could there be? The slides are also filled with too much text. It takes too long for the audience to read through and distracts from me presenting. So there's another issue. Let's see. Here's actionable advice. I want it to not only give me issues, but tell me how to fix them. Actionable advice. Reduce the font size. Reduce the font size of heading 1, which is the title, and simplify the bullet points text so the message is clear and concise. You can imagine, if you're prompting ChatGPT to do anything, you can ask it to do this. In the E section of the acted framework, act as, context, task, example, details. In the example, do something like this. Give an example of what you want it to give you, an issue, and actionable advice. All right, I will copy the details I gave it before just to constrain the output a little bit. Output the code in a single code block, data visualization for the CSV file, output to 3 slides only. And again, take a deep breath and do this step by step. Okay, let's see what ChatGPT gives me in this case. Fantastic. We have all the beautiful colors for Big Data Days that we specified before. And let's see what it does to improve upon all the issues and actionable advice. Okay, now I think it did something incorrect here, which is put the criticisms themselves on the slides, which is not what I want. So let me fix that. Update the slide deck to talk about the algorithms issues and tumor prevalence. Do not include the criticisms and actionable advice on the slides themselves. Okay, so let's see if it fixes that. But you can see it did improve upon the size of the heading 1, which I asked it to. So the font and the formatting did fix itself with my prompting. Okay, let's see what happens. Copy this code, print. Okay, so it did not heed my recommendation to reduce the wordiness here, but you can see that it's being very careful about talking about the AI algorithm and what we should do next. Okay, any questions at this point? This will be the last opportunity for questions before I wrap things up. And I'll answer some of the questions that have come in so far. How detailed do your prompts need to be to give ChatGPT good instruction? Is there too much? My recommendation to you is to be as detailed as possible. Think about when you prompt ChatGPT that you're talking to, let's say, a 5-year-old. If you're giving a 5-year-old instructions about how to do something new, you go into a lot of detail, but you don't be verbose to the point you're unclear. So you don't go rambling and widening in all different directions, but you give sufficient detail to help this 5-year-old understand the problem and what to do about it. So follow the acted framework steps, A, C, T, E, D. Give enough detail for each. For example, for the example section, go over an example of what issues and actionable advice you'd like to see. And that should give you good results. Badri asks, kindly provide insights on conducting research using your personal experience to discover innovative treatment approaches. I'm not sure I understand the question right, so please do clarify that if you can. And if there are any other questions, feel free to put in the chat before I bring things to a close. All right, and as Badri is putting that in, let me wrap things up for you today. We covered a lot over the past hour, 45 minutes or so. I covered with you the acted framework, ACTED. This is a prompt framework I want you to carry with you to whatever you end up doing in your workplace. Remember, the fundamental part is the task, what you ask ChatGPT to do. The second tier of importance will be context and example. Tell ChatGPT not just what the task is, but why it's important to do and how to do it well with your example. The third tier will be act as, the A, and details, the D. Have it be anyone you want, yourself, your audience, experts. Think about how much amazing advice you could get from ChatGPT if you have it be all those people. And then details to constrain the output to exactly what you want it to be. What I want to emphasize here is that what I taught you today is not technical skills. I've taught you how to use Markdown Preview Enhanced, but you can end up using so many other AI presentation tools out there. There's Tome, there's tons out there that can do the same thing and probably in better ways. What I'm teaching you today is leadership, communication, and presentation. I'm teaching you that it's not good enough to create a presentation. You have to think about what your audience needs from it. You have to remember the humanity of this process. And to really dive into that, I want to close with a story. In the University of Texas at Austin, they ran a research experiment. They were dissatisfied with doctors who gave responses to patients. They said the doctors are not very empathetic to patients. They're just rushing all the time. Patients are not satisfied. They ran a study about when ChatGPT was released. They said, can ChatGPT give more empathetic response than doctors can? And the result, you may find surprising, is that ChatGPT gave better results than the doctors did. And there's a reason for this, one reason at least. Doctors often go into the field from a humanitarian standpoint. They want to help people. But in their training, when they actually enter the workplace, they find all that's asked of them is to be efficient. We find that in our own workplaces, you have to finish your data work as quickly as possible so that we can make as much money as possible off of it. So doctors, while they're going through their job, are discouraged from spending time with patients, being empathetic. But ChatGPT, because it's been trained on the language of the internet, it understands what people need. It understands what patients need from their doctors. It can give responses tailored to them, personalized to their needs. So the results of the study were pretty amazing. Doctors were flabbergasted to discover an AI could give more empathetic results to them, more nuanced and detailed responses to them. But it's true. And after all I've taught you today, I hope that's what you remember, that AI is not some tool that will replace all our jobs and make the world a cold and machine-like automated place. If used in the right way, as I've taught you here, as an augmentation of your skill set rather than a replacement for it, to brainstorm or help you do tasks you already know better, it can teach you to be more human in a way. It can teach you to present better, tell better stories, empathize better with your audiences, because data storytelling at the end of the day, the most important part is not the data. It's not the visualizations. It's the people on the other side listening. All of you here are the most important part of my data story today. And for any audience you have in the future, they are the most important part of your data story. So thank you all for attending. It was a pleasure to have this workshop with you. Here's a QR code you can scan with your smartphone that has access to my LinkedIn, a lot of free resources like an ebook that I put together on data storytelling, my YouTube channel, blog articles. Thank you again, and I look forward to you all acting on the ACTED framework in your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. This was excellent. It's probably one of the most intuitive workshops, and it solves so many problems. So I thought it was very nice. I actually learned a lot myself.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's very, very cool. I think we still have time for one question. I saw one question coming in all the way at the end, which is from Ruby. And I think we didn't discuss this one yet. Are there any ethical guidelines or frameworks in place to ensure responsible AI use in storytelling?
Let me check out that question. Any ethical guidelines or frameworks in place to ensure responsible AI use in storytelling? Not that I'm aware of. But what I want to emphasize, go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about this question. I'm also not familiar with any organization that has come up with that.
Right.
But I do think it's a really good question. But what I now learned from you is maybe we should ask ChatGPT to critique it as a AI ethics expert.
There we go. I love it. Act as the expert, as the AI ethics expert, and have it give you that kind of advice. That's perfect.
Good. I would like to close, Christopher, for thinking. I know that doing a hands-on workshop live is always super difficult. I've done it a lot in my life, and this is, as I know, always a challenge because you can get unexpected results. But you've really mastered this, and you have taken the whole audience through, in my opinion, a very, very engaging workshop with a lot of interactive elements and a lot of very good examples which people can actually learn and use in their daily lives. So thank you so much for sharing that. Also, thanks so much for sharing all the workshop materials because that makes it very, very insightful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. And before we move on to our next part, we're going to have a quick look. Yeah, that's done. So within the next hour or so, on 30 minutes from now, we will have once again 2 speakers, which is the final breakout session before we are actually already closing for the day. The time is flying by. And you need to make a choice in track 1, either between Susanna Hicks, who is an AI strategist at Merchants Fleet, and she's going to be talking about an organizational data culture. And in track number 2, we have Joyce Avia, who is a data cloud program lead, and she's going to be talking about AI in action and 5 ways to improve the customer experience using AI. So again, very difficult choice that you would need to make. Note that the next sessions are not workshops, but just regular 45-minute presentations. And with that, I would really, once again, like to thank Chris for your excellent workshop. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for attending.